Good morning, Scott here, known as Cantaloupe to some online, and I'm bringing a video to you on a subject that's interesting to me. It might be of interest to you or someone you know, and I want to react to a video I just watched by Gabrielle Torch. She's the Bearbait Official, at Bearbait Official on YouTube, and she does a lot of technical videos about robots and AI and brain organoids. If you're following her channel, you might know what I'm talking about, but she has recently made a video about falling population rates among human beings, which is interesting, and I want to respond because she says in her video that no one knows the cause of the falling population rates. I don't believe this is true, so hear me out. I think that there's a clear cause, a main primary cause, which is not what you might think. You might expect me to jump to the conspiracy theory of COVID and engineered biological vectors that affect population and fertility. I'm not actually going to say that. I'm going to say something that should be obvious after you think about it, but which I have not heard anybody speak of until, I've said this in my videos. I have mentioned this in other videos. So what I'm going to say is that contraception has a manifold effect on people and society. It has an effect, obviously, on the individuals who use it in terms of preventing birth. Birth control is called birth control because it controls birth, and it has another effect that is not so obvious, a very large and profound effect on the culture of the species that uses it, being humans, of course, in this case. So what happens when birth control becomes a central feature to everyday life, which it has? And for the better part of a century now, birth control has reached technological advancement where it is basically perfected, and you can get cheap, reliable birth control. You're expected to use it. In fact, from an early age, you're expected to prevent birth and live a lifestyle that is quite removed from a natural, healthy lifestyle. And what do I mean by that? I mean that birth control was probably never good to create whole new behaviors. Good being healthy and productive, constructive towards the survival and fitness of the species, of the individuals themselves. That's the yardstick I'm using for the word good, if you object to that word. But there is an actual scientific measurement here, something that's measurable. That's the health and happiness and quality of life of the species and individuals who are using a thing. In this case, what it's doing, what birth control and contraception is doing, is it creates whole new behaviors, such as the possibility of casual sex, which didn't used to be a thing. Okay, now you might find that a funny comment. Okay, it didn't used to be a thing. Really? Yeah, that's true. I stand by that, because back in the jungle, before there was any kind of contraception, casual sex didn't exist, if you think about it. Every sexual act was very much deliberate. It was not entered into lightly. It was an understood commitment by both individuals, usually especially the female, because obviously she runs the risk of getting pregnant. I don't think that most jungle humans are confused about pregnancy unless they are extremely isolated and cut off from all forms of information. As soon as it's understood that sex results in pregnancy, it becomes a barrier to entry. It is supposed to be a barrier to entry. So my point is that contraception removes the barrier to entry, creating this new behavior where it snowballs. And here's my point. It's not just that contraception prevents conception. It prevents lifestyles and cultural norms from taking the center stage in a society where reproduction is emphasized, where it's supported, and it remains the main feature of sex. Sex has transitioned from being about reproduction to being about entertainment because of contraception. So I'm going to say that again. Sex has transitioned from being about reproduction to being about entertainment and recreation. It has become a pastime. It has become, as a result of contraception, something that people just do for fun. And here's your problem. It has become so commercialized, and there's so much sex in the media and in movies and music and every single thing that Westerners consume, that it is thought to be, reproduction from sex is thought to be an after. It's a, at which point you are finally, comfortable with your career. At which point you are finally built up enough, and you found a spouse who's financially stable enough, and you can finally remove the contraception, and the baby happens. Okay, but that's not how it's supposed to be. That's not how it's supposed to be. You're not supposed to live this absurd, unnatural lifestyle and have that be the norm and expectation, and expect population rates to remain how they are supposed to be. So I really think this is like the main thing. It should be obvious now that I've said it. So I don't want to drone on and on and on. But there's one last thing to say about it. The economic part of having a baby, and a lot of people talk about this. They talk about the possibility of having a financial crisis or a financial emergency. No, I don't think. I mean, yeah, you can, but not directly. You can have a financial emergency if somebody is chasing you, if somebody is trying to rob you. I mean, but it really they're the problem, not the money or lack of money. It's that somebody's trying to block you or steal your stuff or rob you at gunpoint, which is what happens. You are expected to pay taxes. You are expected to pay bills. You're expected to buy shelter for yourself and clothing and food and clean water. All of this stuff is for sale, and at the same time we have many billionaires who are basically just living off of the resources that should be reinvested into society. But in late stage capitalism, here's a compounding factor. It's called a compound problem, where you have not just the atmosphere and climate that is created by the contraception itself, like I mentioned, but also the doubling down of the economic part of it, where you have to spend like $30,000 just to have a baby in a hospital. Okay, you're expected to do that, and every single female is told by her friends and by school and by the media and by society that she should not only get through high school but also college. Of course, I mean, we want educated females, don't get me wrong. I'm not trying to say that she should just drop out of middle school. I'm saying that, of course, she should get through high school at least, but when every female is expected to have a career and is decided that she will use the optimal date, or excuse me, the optimal birth date of 26 years old, which if you ask, almost every woman will tell you the best time to have a baby is between 26 and 27. Why is that? There's a science to this, and I'm not making this up. I've seen the video. I probably won't be able to find it to link it in the description, but they will tell you that they all want to have a baby between 26 and 27, and it's because 26 and a half is between the age of 18 and the average age of menopause. Okay, this isn't an accident. It's not random. Between the age of 18, which is when they're legally allowed to have sex with anybody, and the age of menopause, you have 26 and a half years old. So they figure, we're going to split the difference, live our lives to the fullest extent possible, become as economically independent as possible, go to college, have a career that leaves us plenty of time. By the age of 26, you should be out of college with, whatever credentials you want, and at which point you can just remove the contraception, and it's that easy. Okay, but none of this is natural. None of this is natural. All throughout human history, women have never had the luxury of deciding exactly when they're going to get pregnant, deciding who and when they are finally brave enough to date. It's okay. So yes, they should have a say in it. I'm not saying they shouldn't, but to have total say in it is unprecedented, is what I'm saying. To have total control and to have the absurd luxury of postpone having a baby indefinitely is unprecedented. And here's your problem. So it's expensive, one. It's contraception is the default standard, two. And there's no risk required anymore because of everything else, because of social conventions, the status quo, and contraception's existence. So it's not complicated why birth rates are falling. I just want to answer that question. It's really not a mystery, and the solution, finally, at 10 minutes, is to get people to acknowledge that the farther you depart from a natural way of life, the more problems you're going to have from an unnatural lifestyle. Human beings did not evolve in a world with contraception. They did not evolve in a world with hospitals and a requirement to have health insurance. Of course, sometimes human beings lived short, brutish lives as a result, and I'm not suggesting we all get back to that, but to understand the source of our problems collectively when it affects the whole planet. Many, many times our solutions, especially when they are commercial, have a cost, a hidden cost towards the species. When you save the individual by way of medicine, for example, you create an opportunity for disease to proliferate. Sometimes people are supposed to die off, and nobody's trying to hear that. Sometimes people are supposed to not put their genes back into the gene pool if they are, riddled with things like diabetes and asthma and sickle cell anemia and all of these things that historically in our ancient history would have killed somebody off before the age of reproduction, but now they're living much longer lives, and their genes just keep getting recycled and recycled, and there's no thinning of the herd. It's all connected. It's all connected. So you end up with a lot of people who are very unhealthy. You end up with a lot of people who have this deep dysfunction from the commercialization of medicine, from the commercialization of child rearing. As Miss Gabrielle Torch said, it's a big business. Child rearing is a huge multi-billion-dollar business, and you can't do anything nowadays for free. Is the problem. We have to get back to basics, and let some people conclude their natural lives when they're supposed to. I think that it's a very difficult choice. You have to choose the individual or the species, and it's not supposed to be up to us. Final conclusion, I don't think that humans are supposed to have to bear the responsibility, the terrible nightmare responsibility of choosing between individuals versus their own species. Okay, that's just, it's horrific. It's a horrific choice to have to make. And we didn't used to have to make that because it was up to chance. We don't leave things up to chance anymore. We leave things up to administrators and economics. But we always end up erring on the side of safety, erring on the side of sparing the individual at the cost of the species, because it just happens to be the path of least resistance. There's your problem. Reach out if you like. That's a lot to think about. Reach out if you like with questions or comments down below. Thank you. Have a good day.